bit of a contrast to what we saw the markets end on yesterday. Makwe Masilela, thank you very much for joining us. He's from Makwe Fund Managers. Yesterday we ended about 0.5% in the green, with the gains coming through from the resource stocks, the financial stocks. Today I see the financials still pulling through some strength, the resources losing just over 1%. What would you say were some of the major drivers today, Makwe?
I think the financials continue to benefit from a much stronger rand, as we've seen that the rand has been improving. But the global market sentiment is the question of it continues to be subdued because, number one, given that we've been getting good economic data, that unfortunately becomes bad news when it comes to the markets, because all it tells the central bankers is that your economies continue to be resilient, so you might as well continue to increase those interest rates in order to fight inflation. Hence, we see markets struggling today at the back of they expect that interest rates will continue to go up and stay at elevated levels for much longer.
Yeah, and that is quite unfortunate. While we appreciate the economic growth, the central bank action that comes along with it isn't necessarily the greatest of moves. But let's speak about the price of Brent crude. That has also been quite volatile, dropping quite significantly over the last 2 days, Makwe. What are you attributing this to? And can we cross our fingers that it will stay this way as long as the rand remains strong so that we have a decent January? Remember that a month that has 60 days in it.
You know, unfortunately, we don't know that price cap that has been posed on Russian oil. We are still uncertain how it's going to impact the market, but we know the whole idea is to make sure that Russia doesn't get the necessary revenue so that it's unable to continue with the war in Ukraine. Also, what we've seen that we've been seeing the easing of the restrictions in China, that itself tells you that at least there must be some decent demand coming out of that. But the problem continues to be the economic uncertainty, and also we've seen on Sunday as well that OPEC decided to stay put when it comes to the output quotas.
Then some company updates that we saw coming out, and this one is an important one, Makwe, because Glencore has been at the center of many corruption scandals in some of the markets that it operates in. It's now agreed to pay over about $180 million US to the DRC for those allegations around corruption, as well as other actions associated with the company, as well as investigations that it's facing in parts like the United States. Your thoughts on Glencore and whether this is going to be the first of many payments?
I think so far we have to realize that the guys so far, they say they've paid close to almost 27.6 billion rands in relation to those funds. And when it comes to the likes of DRC, number one, remember the DRC itself is Africa's largest producer when it comes to copper. And also DRC, they've got almost half of the world's cobalt. And we know that mineral is very important when it comes to electric vehicles, when it comes to your solar panels. So unfortunately, DRC, what do you call it, Glencore didn't have much of a choice but to make sure that since they're highly invested in DRC, they just had to make sure that they pay and continue to operate. The long and short is that the likes of Glencore continues to be too big to fail. And we've seen in the US, they just got away with a fine. In the UK, Brazil, you start wondering whether they will also, maybe the likes of the UK, start imposing a ban on them, as we've seen with the likes of Spain. And I doubt that will happen. But it just tells you that these big companies, they've got a tendency of doing things the wrong way, but they know they've got a budget to pay their way out.
Well, that's quite unfortunate that that is how they operate, but they are, as you say, too big to fail, and at least there is some accountability coming through there. Makwe, as always, thank you very much for your time this afternoon, and I hope that you have a good rest during the festive period, and we will be catching up with you early next year. That is Makwe Masilela from Makwe Fund Managers, and that is